Well, this evening we have a guest, John Arenz N6YBH with the Rubicon Trail Foundation. Now, John has been driving off-road since his early teens when he took his first trip on the Rubicon Trail at 18 years old in 1978. So since then, he moved to El Dorado County and in his early 20s to just be closer to the trail. That's dedication to the hobby. John has volunteered for Jeepers Jamboree for 28 years and volunteered on the trail since 2000. He's been director of the Rubicon Trail Foundation since 2006. Now, sometime between all that fun time on the trail, he found time to retire from the fire service and retired in 2012 with the rank of captain. John became a ham in 1990 and has always been more interested in VHF and UHF repeater work than any other facet in the radio. He's owned and administered repeaters in the foothills, the Bay Area, for the last 35 years. And he did mix those two hobbies together until 2007 when the foundation decided to organize and license hams and support the use of a ham repeater system in the Rubicon. And since then, the foundation has licensed and trained, get this, over 700 hams in the area. And I want to emphasize when I talk to John, this isn't just stopping their license, but they concentrate on the training as well. So I think it's a great thing. John and his wife Barbara, N6BOA, split their time between the home base in Pullock Pines, at Spider Lake at the Rubicon, and traveling in their motorhome. And John says a popular destination, of course, is finding other vehicle areas and trails around the country to explore. So, without any more ado, please welcome John Arenz.
Hi, everybody.
So I'm going to kind of wing it today. When I was asked to do this presentation, I gladly accepted, and my life got kind of turned upside down the last couple of weeks, but we're gonna do this anyway. So the first slide says ham OHV, and for those of you who don't know what OHV is off-highway vehicle. Ham, OHV, and Rubicon, a relationship. So Rubicon, for those of you who don't know, is a world-famous off-highway trail. It starts in Georgetown and ends in Tahoma. They call it the granddaddy of OHV trails, and they call it that because, not because it's the hardest or the best, it's because it's the oldest. It was originally an Indian trail, became a stagecoach road, but it was first traveled by a Jeep in 1945, we think, and became a popular OHV destination in the early 1950s. It's unique in that it's not in anybody's inventory as a road. It's a public road, and the public has access to it. It has local government oversight from El Dorado County, and it has nonprofit support from the Rubicon Trail Foundation, as Brian mentioned. Rubicon is a community. The people that hang out up there often know each other and often help each other out. And if there's a problem, we get together and we fix it, and we're proud of that. Off-highway vehicles. So off-highway vehicles are a community. They're also a need. People need off-highway vehicles to access the backcountry. Now, there's a lot of ways to access the backcountry. You can walk, or you can ride a horse, or you can ride an off-highway vehicle. Not everybody can walk or ride a horse, but everyone can take a ride, and it's a great way to see the backcountry of our foothills, and it's also a great way to see the backcountry of the rest of the United States. So I put safety down there, and that's because safety is tied into ham radio. I'm going to introduce a few people here. Frank Yost, KA6GWY, administers the 146.805 repeater in El Dorado County. And I'll talk more about that repeater later. But he's been instrumental in putting together ham radio on the trail. I put myself in there, and I guess I could brag about some of the things I've done, but instead I will brag about my wife, N6BOA. She's an extra class ham who, as mentioned before, has licensed over 700 hams. We'll talk more about that later too. So the story of how ham radio really got started up there. Now, I was a ham long before 2007 when this story happened. So this fellow, Dennis Meyer, was a friend of mine, and he was a member of the Auburn Jeep Club who spends a lot of time up there. And one day I was doing a trail project, and Barb was there. We were at Buck Island Lake, and this fellow came running down the trail and said, "Help, help, there's a problem up here, and I don't know what to do, and there's a guy who's hurt." So I grabbed my first aid kit and started walking up the trail. Barb, who's also an EMT, an EMT instructor, walked up the trail with me, and we hustled up there and found a guy who was pretty badly hurt. And I got on ham radio, which barely worked up there because of the canyons, but we happened to be in a high spot. And I got on the ham radio and launched a helicopter, and the helicopter came and took this fellow away. And I don't know if it saved his life, but it certainly could have in that particular instance. And that was that. We walked back to our project, and we were done for the day. And just about that time, this guy, Dennis Meyer, who I knew vaguely, approached us and said, "You know, we have CBs and they didn't work." And we were calling out and trying to do all sorts of things, and we couldn't make this happen. And you walked up with your magic radio and called the helicopter and put EMTs here and fixed the whole problem in 5 minutes. Where'd you get the magic radio, and how do I get one? And we explained it to him, and like I said, we didn't know Dennis real well, but we explained it to him, and he said, "Well, if you," and my wife, by the way, is a chemistry teacher. So he said, "Will you teach a class in ham radio for my Jeep Club?" And my wife, who, for someone who's very smart, apparently is not a very good judge of character, because she said, "Well, I'm not going to do any logistics, but if you set it up, I'll do it." And she didn't know Dennis very well, because he had 50 people sign up for the class in a day and a half. And coincidentally, the Rose Room booked, and we were in business. So that was our first ham radio class, and we never taught one before. And she was a VE at the time, but wasn't associated with a really substantial VE team. But the thing blew up from there. We she developed the training program, and we developed the class and how it worked. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There's a picture of Dennis sitting at the Spider Lake repeater vault just after it was constructed in 2007. And there we are putting antennas on it. And we're just putting it up. Robust. So this repeater system that I'm talking about is not my repeater system. It's Frank's repeater system. And I somehow, even though it's Frank's repeater system, I end up working on it an awful lot. So does Frank. So this thing is impressive. The transmitter is a 500 watt transmitter with 5 phased beams that fan out over the foothills. It's up in Logtown near Diamond Springs. For those of you that are doing the math, that's about 10,000 watts ERP. It has 11 receivers. It has a hub at Union Hill. The 11 receivers are mountaintops all over the county. It has a hub at Union Hill where we have comparators that vote all 11 receivers. It has substantial audio processing there. Echolink connects there. AutoPatch connects there. The controller is there, and that has a 423 downlink to the transmitter, which is 30 miles away. It also has a Lake Tahoe link that works, it has a transmitter at Barton Hospital, and has multiple receivers to it as well. And it also has a UHF repeater in the Rubicon that is PL controlled for local use, or if you switch to a different PL, it works as a link to the main VHF repeater. So that means that people in the Rubicon can, and we train them this way, can talk on simplex to each other, or, you know, if they're close by, so they don't crowd the air, or if they're talking all the way across the Rubicon, they can use the Rubicon repeater, or if they want to talk to somebody outside the Rubicon, change PLs, and it turns on the link transmitter and starts working in the rest of the system. Ham classes. So over 700 OHV, search and rescue, and law enforcement hams have been trained in our classes in the last, I guess it's 12 years, 11 years, something like that. So I wrote the word integrated there. The reason I like to talk about integrated classes is that we try not to just teach the ham cram type class. We spend a full day on teaching you how to pass the test and trying to give you enough information to really have some understanding what you're doing. We teach the math, and we teach the propagation, and we teach the rules, and we really try to dig into it. But we do that in 8 hours, and then send our students away with the information they need to study for the next 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, we talk to them by email. We offer, through the foundation, we offer radios for sale, so you can buy yourself a handheld radio or buy yourself a mobile radio to, in this case, install in your OHV. And when you return to class 2 weeks later, the first thing you do is go into a VE session. Usually we try and limit the class to 50 people, so if any of you are VEs, imagine a VE session with 50 people taking the test. It usually takes, to do 50 people, it takes 13 VEs, and the reason it does is because you need one just for signups and as a runner, and 4 teams of 3 to grade tests fast enough to get them out of there before the end of the day. While the tests are being graded, the radios that people have purchased are handed out. We teach them, and you all know that you're not going to learn how to run a radio in an hour or 2, but we teach them the basics of programming a radio. We teach them specifically how repeaters work. We talk about splits, we talk about PLs, we talk about how to program those things and why they're necessary. And then we spend the last hour talking about calling for help and real-world application. My background is as a firefighter, and so I have a fairly well-developed helicopter program that teaches you how to call a helicopter and how to communicate with it once it gets there, and how to get it landed, and how to get help for people. Since we've started teaching these ham classes, we've had, I'm in the Rubicon quite often, as mentioned. I'm there 100 days a year, so people tend to call on me for help, but I'm not always there. And since we've put this program together, we've had 42 instances of hams besides me calling helicopters for people on the Rubicon and landing them successfully and getting help for people. And of course, some of them were maybe a broken ankle, but certainly some of them have saved people's lives. So, so to me, that's the ultimate application of ham radio in the repeater world. So I'm excited about that. There's a picture of one of our ham classes. This is about 10 brand new hams struggling to figure out how to program a radio. Yeah, good luck. And this is just kind of a general picture of what the trail looks like, and some Jeeps going up the trail. For those of you who have never been out there, it's not just a trail through the woods. It's a vigorous trail over granite, and things break regularly, and it's for experienced OHV people, it's still a real challenge. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a destination. People come from all over the world to run the trail. El Dorado County recently did an economic study that says that the Rubicon Trail brings in approximately $57 million to the county each year. That's a lot of coin. So to me, that's an illustration of how important it is, not just to the county, but to the OHV world in general. So outcomes. Outcomes of mixing ham with OHVs and with Rubicon are connections. We have law enforcement in the Rubicon. We have state parks OHV police. We have El Dorado County sheriffs, and we have Placer County sheriffs. And they're there to enforce the law, but they're also there to help in an emergency. All of those agencies have ham licensed deputies and ham licensed rangers, and that's what they use. They never talk on their own radio. They just listen to what's going on in the Rubicon, and when people call for help, they call for them on the ham radio, and they answer. So that's a great way to connect up there. There's no cell phone, and there's no Facebook, and there's no Wi-Fi, and the only way people can connect other than face-to-face is ham radio. So you can meet friends on the radio. You can talk to them and let them know where you are. We call it the Pine Tree Telegraph, and it works. Extraction and repair. I mentioned people break up there sometimes, and anybody who's been up there has seen broken rigs by the side of the trail and people working on them. And there is nothing better than picking up your ham radio, turning on the link PL, and calling one of your buddies and saying, "Hey, can you please bring me an axle?" And having them say, "Sure, I have that. I'll see you in 4 hours, or I'll see you tomorrow. Camp there. I'll see you tomorrow morning, or whatever." And it's the difference between leaving tens of thousands of dollars of equipment sitting by the side of the road and hiking out, and having the comfort of knowing that one of your buddies can come help you out. And of course, I mentioned life-saving. We've had a lot of people that have survived their injuries or illnesses with better outcomes, and we've had a bunch of people that have survived directly due to ham radio up there. So I think that's a pretty cool outcome too. And that's what I have. So I'll open the floor to questions. Yeah.
What modes do you offer up there? Just FM voice?
That's a good question. So we offer FM voice, and via the repeater system. We also have a pretty well-established digital mode up there. We've got digipeaters at Spider Lake, at the Spider Lake repeater that they showed there. We have another one over by Loon Lake Dam, and pretty much the entire trail is covered by APRS. So of course these days that means if you want to put your weather station on APRS and see real-time what the weather is in the middle of the Sierra, you can do that. For those of you that are APRS people, take a gander through there. You can find out the voltage of my refrigerator, or or look at the weather at Spider Lake, or see people driving their Jeeps through the Rubicon. So that would really be the other mode. Yeah, go ahead.
With the Rubicon spanning 2 counties, you mentioned Placer and El Dorado, and earlier I think you said you had a auto patch.
Mhm.
So you have codes when you go into the auto patch, if you say discriminate which 911 center you want to get into, if you have that level of emergency.
No,
Or is
no.
Frank always sitting there over it?
Frank is often
And
sitting
listening.
there, and when I train new hands, I tell him the very best way to enter the system is to call a ham outside the system, and Frank is the best one to call because he has those connections. And if you're operating in an emergency and you ping yourself to the radio because you've made an auto patch call to central dispatch, now you don't have the ability to address the emergency, and you're really better off with a dispatcher, someone on the outside who can make the call for you. That being said, the auto patch has a call feature. So we have if you dial star 911 on the auto patch, if you simply key up your radio on either the link frequency or on 146.805 repeater and dial star 911, it will connect you to the sheriff's central dispatch on their recorded line. So that means that people don't have to have the whole auto patch sequence and understand how an auto patch works. It means they just key the radio and get where they need to be. Yes?
How do you, or what type of antennas do you have up there? A lot of times during the winter, you get a lot of ice, high winds, and is vandalism a problem?
We haven't had, vandalism hasn't been a problem. The repeater's located near my house, and so it's easy for me and the people who live there to keep a good eye on it. That being said, the community is so behind the system that anybody who, I think the outcome for anybody who tried to vandalize it or steal from it would be poor. The community would pull together behind that. It has multiple antennas on it. Since the inception of the system, it started out with Rubicon Trail Foundation in partnership with Frank Yost. Since then, we've entered into cooperative agreements with Jeepers Jamboree to put a commercial repeater in the same vault, and they have paid for the master antenna and the combining system as their part of the expense. And we've partnered with the El Dorado Sheriff's Office, and they have a sheriff's repeater in there as well, the dispatch repeater in there as well. And their part has been the solar panels and the power and maintenance of that. So we've got a good cooperative agreement going there with multiple people, and it's working. Antennas. So most of the stuff up there is on UHF. The master UHF antenna is a 26-foot superstation, 11 dB, 2 degrees of down tilt superstation master. It's been up there 6 years. Our high gust is 122 miles an hour, and it still survives. It's on 25 feet of Roan 45G, and it's anchored into the granite at the bottom and guide, and it's surviving. We've also got some cell wave stacked dipoles up there for link antennas and single dipoles, and haven't really had a problem. Been very lucky. Yes, in back.
Do you publish a diagram of the system?
There's a diagram of the system published on the KA6GWY webpage. So if you Google KA6GWY, it will take you to his webpage, his personal webpage, which has a diagram of the system on it, which is probably not up to date because we've added, in the last 2 years, we've added 3 receivers and digital capability. So it may or may not have that on there. Yeah.
Is this an open system or is there some sort of registration?
It's an open system.
It is open?
It's an open system. And honestly, during the winter, it's pretty quiet. And during the summer, it is night and day. It's always running. Yes?
Between the transmitter and all the receivers, are they hardened against fire? And I'm thinking
Interesting
about
question.
car and campfire we had last year, which
Sure.
I know that wiped out some commercial sites.
So most of the receivers are in commercial sites that are cooperative agreements. There's a couple that are at people's homes that happen to be in a great spot for a receiver, and the Rubicon repeater's on solid granite, so it's not in any real danger. But thanks for asking me, because now I'll have to think about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Carla lost the box.
Yeah.
Shasta Valley.
For people that are monitoring down in the valley, the 805, are there any rules or things you'd like us to do to support your activities up there?
Not particularly. The same rules, the same radio etiquette rules that apply to any repeater. Monitor the air and make sure that we're not dealing with an emergency when you jump on there. Give it a few minutes to make sure and be polite. And we really have had zero etiquette problems. It's been a pretty pleasant experience. Yes.
Can that repeater get hit anywhere along the trail?
The Rubicon repeater,
Good spots.
the Rubicon repeater itself, now you have to differentiate. The 805, the 146.805 VHF repeater has very sparse coverage up there. The UHF repeater at Spider Lake is handheld coverage along the entire trail. Yes.
You mentioned CB early on. Is that even used up there anymore?
No, it's funny. I have a friend who is up at my house at Spider right now, and I see him once every 3 or 4 years, and he's an old friend, and he comes up there and hangs out. And he rolled in, and it's not a ham, and he rolled in, and he said, it took me an hour and a half to find the microphone for my CB, and I plugged it in, and not one person is on that thing. So the answer is no, not really. It's not, as I'm sure the room is aware, the noise floor on CB is so high that it's not particularly valuable. And the back.
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Oh,
Sorry.
somebody else? Yeah.
In the APRS mode, do you support any text?
Well, I
location?
think that someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a APRS guru. I have APRS and I've used it for texting, and I put a weather station up and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of in maybe the middle level of expertise. But using the SMS GTE system, I think any APRS digi that has decent access to an iGate will work in text mode. And yes, I've texted from there many times.
Do you find a preference on the trail? Is it mostly voice?
It's mostly voice. It's mostly voice, and for those of you that have delved into it, you know that once your radio is programmed, voice is pretty easy to use, and for new APRS users, it can be daunting. It took me a little bit to figure it out, but APRS is really cool. I'm excited about it.
What percentage of people on the trail have ham radios at their feet?
I would say, well, there's a lot of handhelds because we do have handheld coverage on the entire trail, and people don't want to spend the money for a mobile when they can just use a handheld until they start using it and realize what a pain in the neck a handheld is in a vehicle. So of the locals, people that are up there all the time, I would say probably 50% or so. And of the out-of-towners, probably 10 or 15%. But we have had, this is a destination trail. Demographically, we have, on the weekends, it's almost all locals, Northern California and Nevada. And there are anywhere from 100 to 300 people on the trail each weekend. Which means, 80 to 150 Jeeps on the trail each weekend. And what's interesting is that the people that run the trail on the weekend don't realize, and never come during the week, don't realize that every Monday a whole crew of what I call one-timers shows up from Oklahoma and Florida and Utah and wherever, and they show up to run the whole trail because it's a bucket list thing. It's a destination thing. So so there are quite a few out-of-towners that run it during the weekend. It's surprising how much research they do, and I've had many of them that get their ham license because they're going on the Rubicon Trail and they don't want to be without communications. So probably, if I had to guess, 15 or 20% of those. Yeah.
And just clarification, the traffic on 440 up there, do we hear that on 805 or only when they PL through?
So the way the system's set up is that 440 box has a VHF receiver on it, so you hear all the traffic on the 805 repeater all the time. It has a VHF transmitter as well. If you use the 156.7 PL with that repeater, it keeps your traffic, it just keys the Rubicon repeater and your traffic stays inside the Rubicon. If you switch to the 107.2 PL, it keys the repeater and the link transmitter, and now it's here on the 805. And we do that on purpose so that the OHV community can be very chatty and talk a lot up there. And when we first put it up without that ability, it was horrible. It was like you were linked into a different world. When the people in the front country were linked into a different world they didn't understand and were tired of listening to it. So we changed the way it was set up. Okay, no, I think that covers it. Thanks for listening to me chat.